and that all fits, almost. You might have to lose a few things, okay? And so I want you today to keep those things your 3 priorities, because homeschooling is at least a part-time job, right? 4 hours a day, and a regular job is 8 hours a day. So it's at least a part-time job. So you got to put your focus on the Lord, your focus on your spouse if you're married. I'm a widow, so I don't have to deal with that. But I had a wonderful husband, and we did put our marriage first, and then we put our homeschooling third. So I just really recommend you keep that in mind, because I'm going to share a lot of information with you, and it can be totally overwhelming. So I don't want you to be overwhelmed today. I just want you to take things in stride. Remember about Steve casting vision and the requirements of the law. And I was raised by an attorney, so I think it's important to follow the law in both the letter and the spirit. And that's the same that we should do with the Bible, right? We follow it, especially the New Testament, to the letter and spirit of the law. So I want you to keep that in mind while I start the PowerPoint, and I'm going to go sit down, and if I have to readjust my eyes, you'll know why, okay? All right, so you heard the vision, you heard the law, and now we're going to, how do you actually homeschool? When I started homeschooling 25 years ago, I was just like you, but nobody was teaching how you actually homeschool. So this is what we're going to do today. All right, so the nuts and bolts are the practical how-to of homeschooling. And you can read these later. These are just my credentials, so you know that I might have some basis as to how I can present this. And I have homeschooled for more than a quarter of a century, and I have 3 more years to go. And I will not be bored when I'm done. I have adult children who are just doing tremendously in their lives. They would say that they're Christians. They don't all go to church, but they do trust in the Lord. They have a wide variety of careers, from film production to serving in the Marines to being an entrepreneur, just a lot of different things. Homeschooling worked great for us. We started because one of my children was struggling in school, and the principal of the school said, you know, there's this new thing called homeschooling, and we think you guys would be really good at it. So I say a public school principal told me to homeschool. And we were just going to do it for a year to help my son, and then we decided we really liked it. And so we kept going, and we have loved it ever since. It is a lifestyle. It's not just institutional school at home. And through the years, I've learned a lot of things, and I ended up writing books and doing public speaking. But mostly for many years, I was just a homeschool mom. And my husband was great. When he got home from work, he'd take the kids and be with them, and he was very involved in our homeschool as well. So if there's 2 of you in a family, I recommend it's a shared burden. That way, one person won't get burned out. And by the way, I'm going on a cruise in 3 weeks before we start school. Okay, so this is a picture of most of my family, and including my wonderful parents on the far right of that picture. And this is a photo of my late husband, who was not only handsome, but he was very fun and a great hands-on homeschool dad. And this is the verse that reminds me of him. Only fear the Lord and serve him in truth with all your heart, for consider what great things he has done for you. And I am very grateful that a long time ago, God told us we should homeschool, even though we had no idea what it would involve. And I'm so grateful we've been able to do it. Okay, today we're going to discuss how to prepare your home, how to prepare your child, how to prioritize your time, how to schedule your day, how to choose your curriculum, how to enjoy your homeschool journey with your family. I want you to remember that great change and associated success does not happen overnight, but by small steps every day through the years. And I liken it to playing a musical instrument. Has anybody ever played the violin or piano? And you know that first year that you're taking lessons, it sounds horrible and you want to quit and you don't practice as much as you should. But if you stick with it and you practice 20 minutes a day, and then later on when you get really good, maybe a half hour, an hour, you have mastered it in 12 years, haven't you? And that's what I say about homeschool. The first year, you're intimidated. The second year is a little harder because you know all the things you planned to do but you didn't do. And the third year is like, oh wow, this is a long journey. But after you get past the fourth and fifth year, kind of like past the fourth and fifth kid, it just gets easier and it seems to work out. So don't give up. All right, other topics we're going to briefly cover include marriage and family life, middle and high school, preschool and the early years, preventing burnout, record keeping and schedules, the role of fathers, single parent homeschooling, struggling learners, support groups, and I now can officially talk about grandparenting while homeschooling because my 3 grandchildren and my daughter-in-law are living with us while my son is deployed. And so we're going to start them homeschooling this fall, so I'm so excited. All right. Before I gave this presentation, there were several other ladies who gave it, and some of them were the wives of previous executive directors of CHEC. And when I went through their slides to come up with my own presentation, these were some of the things that they all agreed on, and I agree with them that these are important to consider in homeschooling. Prayer and a personal relationship with Christ. And I do start my morning with a devotion and prayer. In fact, I end my day laying in bed praying at night too, and praying throughout the day. How can I meet the needs of my diverse children and keep going and not burn out? To have a biblical vision for homeschooling. And I would say in the beginning, we didn't necessarily, as our family, have a biblical vision. But by the second year we did, because unless you have a really strong anchor, you will not be able to sustain the storms. Parental humility and teachability, and boy, this is one for me because I'm a type A, ultra-confident person, and I have to humble myself to my children, and I have to really be able to be taught myself how to do things. Through the years, I've done a lot of reading and research. I just read another great book this summer that I'm going to talk about later. And so you, as a teacher, have to be able to also be taught. And then you can teach your kids. Discipline and encouragement, and I don't mean corporal punishment. I mean to help your children learn self-governance, that there's a routine to your day, chores are expected, and also you're to do the best you can on your schoolwork. Flexibility and structure. You know, sometimes people drop by your house and they need something and you just kind of have to pause your homeschool and help them. But it's also really good to have a structure and say, you know, we're going to homeschool from 10 to 12, then we're going to have lunch, and then we'll do a couple hours in the afternoon, or whatever works for your family, so that you're training your kids what to expect when they get up in the morning. Marriage and family unity, and this of course is a struggle for everybody that's married and has kids, right? And we just have to be humble and forgive each other, but also apologize when we've wronged each other. And we have to be on the same page. We have to believe that this is going to be a really good thing for us. Effective child training. So if you have a 5-year-old child who's out of control, and one of my grandchildren is a little bit like that, you need to let them know what the expectations are and to follow through. And my daughter-in-law is learning very quickly how structure helps her children. And she now can put them to bed and nobody cries, so that's a good thing. So effective child training, and I've got some books to recommend later for you. All right, home organization. You know, I would say early on when we had a whole bunch of little kids, our house was a wreck and I was a messy and my husband was a messy. And we decided to start homeschooling, we had to kind of clean up our act. And so we don't have, you know, a perfect house that's perfectly clean, and we don't have white furniture. We just live in an old farmhouse, but in the morning and in the evening, we pick it up and then we can enjoy it more. Because when you start homeschooling, you add a lot of books, a lot of toys, a lot of games. So between now and when you're going to start school, I really recommend thinking about how you're going to organize your home. Parental willingness to be sanctified. And sanctification is what the Lord does to us, right? We become a believer, we're filled with the Holy Spirit, and then the rest of our life, hopefully we're reading our Bible, attending a church, hearing sermons, and the Lord is sanctifying us. And with homeschooling, you'll have a whole new list of things to be sanctified on. Then I really recommend, if you're not doing daily family worship, that you consider starting to do that. And that it can be as simple as just reading one chapter in the Bible after breakfast. It could be as complex as having all your kids read the Bible together and then do worship songs. Maybe one of the parents shares a little bit about what they're struggling with and pray for everybody. But if you can get your family and yourself to focus on the Lord, and Dad, this is a really important thing, if you can learn to lead this, it is a great help in keeping peace and keeping your focus on Christ. Teaching that is effectively geared toward individual learning styles, individual and family interests, a vision for faith, work, and lifelong learning. Because really what we're doing is hopefully we are training our children to be productive citizens, to be lovers of Christ and serving in their local church as their adults, and to enjoy lifelong learning, especially reading or just being able to enjoy hobbies. We want to instill in them these things, and it's not just we're putting institutional school in our house. Okay, so first we're going to talk about preparing our home. So here's some helpful hints. First, determine the space where you will use for teaching. If your home is small, every room can be a homeschool opportunity. If you have the luxury of having a large house, maybe you're going to turn your family room or a library or what we call a rec room into your schoolroom. Whatever you decide, that's your prerogative. Everybody homeschools a little bit different. So you might get tips from other homeschoolers that you know, but think about your house and what works best. You can utilize walls, floors, ceilings, and tabletops for map, art, and charts. And believe me, you will have lots and lots and lots of art to display. When my kids were little and they painted and colored endless pictures, I just turned those into stationery. In fact, when I paid my public service bill, I would just put a little picture in there just to give the person who opened up my check a little bit of joy. But grandparents love getting things like that. You want to consider a toy system to kind of organize that part of your house, because it is good to let one or two of the kids creatively play while you're helping someone else with math. Declutter your house and have a yard sale to pay for school supplies. So this is a really, really important thing, I would say. If you haven't used something in 5 years, consider pitching it or taking it to Goodwill or having a garage sale, because you will start to accumulate more things. Simplify your existing housekeeping systems. So in the old days, when the poor housewives had to do everything by hand, I mean everything, wash your clothes in the river, grow the sheep, to shear them, to knit the wool socks, praise God we don't have to live like that, although it's kind of fun to go practice it. But if you have some sort of a system where your house is cleaned once a week, you figure out how you're going to get your laundry accomplished. Those are good things for not only the adults in the house, but the children to learn to pitch in so that they can become neat and tidy. I have a couple of daughters that are still just real messies, and I'm trying to help them learn that they need to pick up their room every night before they go to bed. And even though my sons were often super messy when they were little, somehow when they hit about 14 and 15, they discovered taking showers 3 times a day, and they also learned how to keep their room clean. I am so blessed because my daughter-in-laws will appreciate that, right? Set up a home management binder or do it on your phone, some kind of easy-to-use system. I just have a chart on a bulletin board in kind of the hallway where all the family goes in and out and merges. And everybody knows what's expected on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We have our school schedule there. But it helps me remember, oh, it's Tuesday, we should get this done. Include your children in the management of your home by establishing a chore system. Change jobs each month and keep the chart posted. Once your children learn to read, you can just say, it's over there. Maybe they're non-readers, so you can cut out little pictures from magazines so they know maybe it's their day to put laundry down in the laundry room or whatever it is you're going to assign them to do. But if you're a full-time homemaking mom and you are just starting homeschooling, you are going to need everybody in your house to pitch in with the housework. Wives, take your role of manager seriously and invest in it. If you need to buy more laundry baskets, then budget and do that. Husbands, bless your wives by offering your services. If you're a dad that works away from home all day long, I recommend this tip that my mom and dad taught me. My dad was a workaholic attorney, but he came home every night at 6 o'clock, and he went into the bedroom with my mom, and they just sat and visited for a little bit. That way she could tell him about her day, and he could do the same. He changed out of his suit and tie and put on his casual clothes, and us kids knew that that's when we were supposed to go set the table for dinner and get the living room picked up. And then my dad came out, and he was cheerful, he was relaxed, and he was ready to be with us at the dinner table, and then afterwards, he would take us on a walk around the block or go play baseball out in the backyard, do something to give my mom a break. And then she might just do the dishes, or one of us kids would help her load the dishwasher. But that way, mom got a break. And we weren't even homeschooled. We all went to public school. But you know, ladies, we just get burnt out. And so you need to be able to communicate, if you're married, to your husband what's needed. And husbands, women aren't necessarily good at communicating. They think you should just know what needs to be done. So make sure you say, honey, how can I help you? All right, so my friend Andy Davidson has a very nice toy system and a very good school system. Now, I have more kids than her, and I had way more stuff, so I'm using her pictures, not mine. But you can see all her school supplies are organized in a cabinet, and then she has her kids' toys organized by little bins. So if somebody needs to entertain themselves in the living room, they grab the bin of dinosaurs, and they go play with that, and then when they're done, they put that back, and they come out and get the next thing. And that way the house is relatively clean, and the kids who aren't being worked with for schoolwork right then can have something to do. Okay, prepare your home, including routines. So you're going to have a new routine with homeschooling, and you need to really admit that and figure it out. So figure out a daily routine to achieve the 4 hours a day for homeschooling. Figure out a weekly routine to achieve your chores and the other things that need to be done throughout the week to keep your home running. You know, your kids can help you with chores, and it can even be considered part of their schoolwork, like household skills or personal development, but it shouldn't be the majority of their schoolwork. Start your new household routine a week or two before you're actually going to start homeschooling. That'll give everybody a little practice. You can kind of work out the kinks, and then when you add homeschooling in, it won't be everything changing at once. When you do start homeschooling, and we still do this after 25 years of homeschooling, I suggest you just start with 1 or 2 subjects, and each week through, we always start in September, each week through September we add a couple more so that by the end of September we have our full schedule implemented. So we always start with reading and math, because if you can teach your kids reading and math, they can excel in any subject. So we start that the first week, and then the next week we add, you know, like our science class, and then the following week we add our history, that kind of a thing. Allow for breaks from your school routine to prevent burnout. Evenings, weekends, Sunday, Sabbath, holidays, and family vacations. You know, as adults, we like receiving a paycheck and going and traveling, right? I mean, or going on a date. I like that. I feel like it's my reward for all my work. Well, our kids need that too. They need something as simple as let's all go to Dairy Queen on Friday night. Or on Saturday night, let's have pizza and watch a movie together. Or on Labor Day weekend, let's go to the mountains. And they need to know what's coming so that they can look forward to it. I think your kids will buy into the idea of a homeschool lifestyle if there's some perks built in. And they don't have to be expensive. It could just be that, like in our family, we have, each child has 1 day a week. It's the day they do their laundry. It's the day they get to sit in the car, front seat, if they're old enough. And it's the day of the week that they can watch a movie with me at night while everybody has to go to bed on time. They can stay up with me. Those are perks that they like. Kids really should like being with their parents. They should look forward to that time. If you'll do that when your children are little, then when your children are teenagers, they'll still want to be with you. So start those habits young. And I do think family vacations are important to make memories. If you ask my kids, what's your favorite thing you remember from childhood? Oh, remember when we went on the trip to such and such a place? Even if we had a flat tire and it was a disaster, they still remember that. Okay. Steve talked a little bit about record keeping and what's required, but I want to talk about how you actually do that. So you're going to read what the law says and determine how you're going to follow the law. So our family belongs to the Czech Independent School. Prior to my husband's death, he was a college teacher, so we were exempt from the law, but we did basically follow the NOI, so that if anybody ever asked us or questioned us, especially because we had adopted children and social workers would come to our house and we had to look like we knew what we were doing, we had, you know, all of those things spelled out on worksheets up on the wall so everybody knew what we were supposed to be doing. I would recommend you keep it simple, silly, because if it gets complicated, you will not follow through with it. You know, you'll start out great, and then you'll burn out, and you'll get away from it, and then you'll keep avoiding it. So what I suggest is you do it very simply like I do. I assume that we do 4 hours or more of school a day for at least 172 days, and I just filled out my Czech IS attendance form last night, and we start right after Labor Day. We take Thanksgiving and the day after off. We take 2 weeks at Christmas and New Year's. We take a week at spring break, and we school through May 31st. That's our last day. So by doing that, we had 177 days. I don't know about you, but I like to have a little cushion, and I'd rather go too much than fall short. And I just say, whatever days are on the calendar, we're homeschooling Monday through Friday, and we have a chart. We start, and I'll go over that in a minute, when we start, and it's 4 to 6 hours a day. And so I don't keep track of attendance, I just know what it is. Let's see. I know that people are having questions about testing, and we're going to talk about that more. But I want you to know that I never tested my kids. I didn't even give them the math test because I helped them every day. I knew exactly where they were. And when my husband was alive and was a college educator, he wrote a really nice narrative and grade card for them at the end of every year. And we never tested our kids. until we had a few that want to go to college. So we practiced taking, you know, the SAT and ACT out of the book for dummies, and they scored really high. They knew their stuff, they did well. So like the lady said in the back, you'd be shocked at how much your kids really know. But if you need to test, just do it. And I always recommend practice tests first. I do not test my younger children who all came to us through adoption. They have a lot of trauma issues and special needs. And so I fill out the check parent assessment, and I'm doing that right now because it's at the end of the school year. And it takes about 4 or 5 hours, just like standardized testing would. But you go through every subject and you talk about what you're using and what they're doing well at, what they're struggling with, and what you're going to do different next year, or just keep doing the same. And it's actually way better than standardized testing because it helps me be a better teacher. I do check my kids' work, and I do math and English with all my kids one at a time. Takes 3 hours with 3 teenagers every morning. And then in the afternoon, we do group subjects, so I know what my kids have accomplished. If they have their own independent workbooks like penmanship or something, I check those once a week. And then my high school kids, I learned to trust them, and if they weren't trustworthy, I'd check them every week. Otherwise, I'd check them at the end of the month. Okay, let's go. There we go. All right, scheduling your day. So I recommend you have a chart, and it can be however you want it to be. It can be color-coded, it can have a picture of each kid, but you have different times through the day that you're doing different things. So you have breakfast at this set time, lunch at this set time, snack and free time, dinner, and you have a consistent routine for your children. Many, many research studies show that routine is good for adults and it's really good for kids. And in our society, people are losing a scheduled routine for their children, and I think that's why a lot of children are really out of control. And then when they get to high school, they're really out of control. So, side of the refrigerator, wherever you're going to put it, doesn't matter. What makes sense for your family? So, we follow kind of a traditional school schedule just because it's easier for me to remember. We school 5 days a week, and in a 24-hour day, we need sleep 8 to 10 hours, right? I need 9, so I get 9 hours. Last night I didn't, but I'll live. We eat 3 meals a day plus snack. We school a minimum of 4 hours. We have chores or other work. We live on a farm, so we have livestock chores. And then we also want to relax, refresh, and reconnect as a family. If parents and children will talk to each other, and I think it's a great blessing of the homeschool lifestyle, 3 meals a day, you have connected way more than the average family who sadly eats 3 meals a week together, and often it's at McDonald's and the kids are playing and the parents are on their phones. So to me, I love sitting at the dinner table with my kids. Even if one of them has frustrated me, we still sit down, we have a nice meal, and we sit and visit for a while. And that is so important for the mental health of every member of your family. Then one day a week, we have other work, chores, and errands. So maybe the grocery store, go to the hardware store. We use Saturday to clean our house, just those kind of different things. And then one day a week, you should worship the Lord. And you also should take the day off from mundane chores. I felt like I was a workaholic when we had a lot of kids living at home, and I did laundry on Sundays, and my husband actually scolded and corrected me and said, you know what, the washing machine needs to take a break, and so do you, so I don't want you doing it on Sunday. We're going to go to church, we're going to relax, we're going to be together, and I do not want you doing the laundry. Well, when I stopped doing that, somehow it just worked out, and so I really recommend you have one day a week that you really relax. Let me go back. I just want to point out that you choose what days of the week you school and do your things. You choose what order it happens. You choose what, where, when works best for your family. That's the beauty of homeschooling. You can homeschool in the morning or the afternoon or the evening or even night segments. If you work strange shifts at your house, we had some really good friends that both worked the night shift. Well, one worked the early night shift and one worked the late night shift. And so the kids would sleep and one parent would be home, and then the other parent would go to work, and they would homeschool in the afternoon and evening because that's what worked best for them. Just remember your minimum of 172 days, and there's 365 days in a year, so it doesn't matter which of the days you choose. But I do recommend you have it on a piece of paper so that if anybody questions you, you can just say, here's what we do. Not that anybody is, but. Okay, so if you don't feel like you are a good home manager, maybe your mom worked full-time and didn't really show you how to do things, I would really recommend that at this point in time, one person in your household, whether it's the husband or the wife or a single parent, and the kids learn to manage their home, what it takes to keep a home daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly. And I really recommend Terry Maxwell's Titus 2 Ministry out of Kansas City. They have excellent books, including Managers of Their Homes, and I think we might have some of those for sale today. But then another really good book is called The Homeschooling Housewife, and I was a beta reader on it, and Amber Fox just did an excellent job of explaining how you get all the home management done while you're homeschooling. But if you determine a daily schedule and you post it and you stick to it as a goal, you can allow for flexibility because people get sick and things happen, but it will really benefit you. Schedule regular school, regular chores, regular cleaning, so see that regular. Assign tasks to the children as your helpers. The older children can work with younger, and you can train them how to do everything. My kids now clean the house for me. I don't have to do anything. I usually just go in and clean my office. And they need some correction, you know, remember to change the light bulbs if they're burned out or things like that. But they just know how to do it and get it done in 2 hours. It will really benefit them as adults that they have learned to do that. And then there's a lot of online resources that you could log on to. Okay, schedule your day. So here's an example of how to schedule your day. And in the Check Guidebook, there's actually a big section with a lot of different ideas for scheduling how you get homeschooling done. But I get up about 7:30 or 8, and I have to have my coffee. And then I try to do a Bible devotion and some reading before I get on Facebook. I don't always do that, but. And then I make breakfast, and my kids wake up, and then they get their room straightened and get dressed. And then we eat breakfast, and we talk about what's going to happen that day. I have really found, especially with my adopted children, they want to know everything ahead of when it's going to happen, so they know what to expect. So we just have kind of a little Monday morning business meeting to discuss the whole week, and then each morning we talk about, okay, we have to go to the dentist office at such and such a time, and go over things like that. Then the kids feed their livestock. They just sold a bunch of them at the county fair, so it'll be really easy now. And then they start their individual schoolwork coming into me one at a time. They kind of rotate out with piano and reading. When I had a lot of little kids, we just sat at the kitchen table and I just kind of helped them all at once. Then one or more of the kids will help me get lunch on. If the younger kids are all done with their morning schoolwork, then they can go what we call Imagination Station, and they can just go play with costumes or go out in the yard or Legos or something like that, because that is very educational. It's training their brain to be creative problem solvers. Then we have lunch with a family devotion. And we don't always get our devotion in, but we don't feel guilty about it because we get it in most of the time. Then in the afternoon, after lunch, the kids have PE, and I always just assign the oldest kid to lead the games. And if there's a couple older kids, and they can rotate out, so maybe they'd go running up and down our driveway, or they'd go play basketball, or just something to get a little bit of exercise in. And it's really a good sibling builder, I think, to do that. And sometimes I'll go out and I'll play baseball with them, and they're shocked that I can hit a home run. And then we'll have a block group lesson. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday afternoons, we do 5 different things. And one of the things we do is on the day that we have piano lessons, we go in town and do grocery shopping and errands, and we call that consumer choices because they help me. I really think it's super important for kids to have unstructured free time. And so if everybody got their work done at 3, then they have till dinner to just relax and go entertain themselves. And I limit my kids to 2 hours of screen time. So if I see them on their screen starting at 3 o'clock till 5, that's like, okay, well, you don't get to watch a movie tonight. What are you going to do instead? And they might go outside and just play in the evening when it's nice out. And then we have dinner and get ready for bedtime and try to have a really peaceful going to bed time, because I think it's really important for all members of the family to go to bed, go to sleep with a calm and peaceful heart. Now, we don't always have that because I have teenagers and I have adopted kids with trauma issues, but we at least try to talk somebody down and tuck them into bed. I love you, sleep good, pray with you, that kind of thing. So that's how our household generally runs. I want to remind you that you shouldn't get so caught up in any system that it robs your joy and hurts your relationship with your family members, because the idea of systems for home management is to bless people. The idea of homeschooling is to bless your family. So if you find yourself getting angry or the kids are frustrated, step back and figure out what's going on, have a family meeting. And it's really hard to allow your children to tell you exactly what they think. But it's important for them to feel like they have a voice and a say. And if somebody is complaining, I always say, okay, well, what are 3 solutions you would offer to that? And then we discuss it, and because I'm the single parent, I pick the one we decide. They need to, even if they're 4 or 3 or 15, they need to be able to respectfully share their frustration, and that is a really good practice for them to become an adult. Because in relationships, in the workplace, in groups, all of those situations work better when people can winsomely, humbly say, it really frustrates me when you do this, can we try something else? And I've got to say, my adult kids really learned that. My husband was a Mensa level creative genius. He was an architect, and I'm an over-the-top person. And so we butted heads a lot because I think it was just our personalities. But we somehow managed to train our kids to be able to have a voice in their relationships and workplace despite our shortcomings. That was God really changing the dynamics of our family. And I have a daughter who's a sous chef in New York, and it's a super competitive environment. And if you know anything about professional chefs, it definitely is something where the guys get more pay and the women are taken advantage of. And I'm not a feminist, but I think that's accurate. And she was up for a promotion, and a really good promotion, and they offered her an increase in salary that she felt like wasn't enough. And she told them, I'd love the job, I will give it 200%, I'll do fantastic, but I need a 30% raise. And she just said it very calmly. And the head of the human services for this corporation that has 15,000 employees said, well, we've never given anybody a 30% raise in the history of the company. And she said, well, I guess you'll just have to make history then, won't you? And she got the raise because she was able to very calmly stand up for herself, say what the situation was. Of course, she had researched what everybody was making in the field. And so that's a really good thing, to be able to help your kids learn to advocate peaceably and respectfully. Okay, so how can you most effectively teach each child in your family's homeschool? Who has more than one child they're going to homeschool? Okay, who has little people at home? Okay, so you're going to need to learn to juggle the plates. When I was a kid, there was a show called The Ed Sullivan Show, and it was so great. And my favorite performer on there was a guy who had these long, like 8 or 10 foot bamboo poles, and he juggled plates on them, and he'd get like 6 of them going. And I really think that's what it feels like when you're homeschooling and managing a home and you have more than one child and you have little people. You have to be able to multitask in the extreme. So what I suggest is for individual learning, you help each child go through their workbooks one-on-one for English and math at their individual level. Those are the subjects that need individual sequential progression. You rotate out your students as they also work independently, maybe have creative play, art, coloring, house chores, or helping with the younger kids. So I'm helping one student while another student is doing their piano lesson and another student is doing their penmanship and wordly wise and things like that in their bedroom. And then when I'm done with one, the next comes out, and we rotate like that. And it works if you have 7 kids too. I suggest these are scheduled in the morning when everyone is the freshest. I have an 18-year-old daughter who has reactive attachment disorder, and she can be a super toxic person to deal with. She's wonderful on her good days and really frustrating on her bad days. And because she was the oldest at home of my 3 teenagers, I would help the 2 younger teenagers first, and then we'd get to her math lesson about 11 o'clock. And she couldn't handle it. She was already fried, she was already tired, already crabby. So this last year, it finally dawned on me, and God showed me, do her first. And I'm telling you, she blazed through so many math concepts. It was amazing because her brain was fresh. She just had breakfast. She'd gone outside to be with her animals. She did her piano practice, and she was ready to do math. And we did math first and then English, and we had very few tears after years and years of tears. Then for group learning, like after lunch, have the kids enjoy PE, and you do it too if you can. And get outside if at all possible. We have become indoor creatures on cell phones, and we need to be outside running around, catching butterflies, jumping rope, and doing those kinds of things. And then do one group lesson, because it can be a multi-level approach. So this year for our history, we did the Czech civics book. We worked halfway through it. And then we also did an Abeka American history book. And we did maps for geology, or geography, the location of all the United States. And that was one of the afternoon group lessons, and we spent an hour and a half. I would read aloud, the kids would take turns reading aloud, we'd discuss the questions, they'd take notes. Sometimes they drew a picture to illustrate the concept we were talking about. And then you can also, so you can either do history every day or you can do history one time for a couple hours. All right. I think it's important when you want to effectively teach each child that you focus on setting days and times to do school. There's a lot of people who say they are unschoolers, and I think when my kids were little, we were unschoolers too, but we still had a routine. As your kids get older, they need to take the routine on for themselves. They need to learn to set their alarm clock, or at least go to bed early so they wake up at the same time every day. They need to keep track of what they're doing, and this is in middle school and in high school. And if you don't have expectations and a set routine for different things to be done at certain times, they are never going to learn that self-governance. And I think this is what sets homeschoolers apart from institutional schoolers, is that they become very independent learners. And one of the real telling statistics is homeschoolers who go to college, which not all do, but those who do graduate in 4 years, and they're very independent learners, and they generally make very good grades. And that's why now colleges heavily recruit homeschoolers, because a lot of the other kids attending school will take 5 or 6 years, or they will not get the most out of their education. And so I think a really important thing about the homeschooling lifestyle is teaching your child self-governance. When students get their work finished, they can then relax and enjoy perks, and that's that built-in thing you got to think about, you know. You do have to reward good behavior. Sometimes we have to punish bad behavior, but please reward good behavior and make sure that you are laughing with your family members. Help the oldest first. Enjoy teaching so that your students are enjoying learning. Mix up the learning with hands-on activities or outdoor exercise breaks. Try to avoid leaving home every day, and this is a problem in our culture, and I see it on the homeschool Facebook groups I belong to. People are in their car every day, and you know, we live in a remote area and it costs us $15 to go to town in gas, and so we try not to go home every day. Now, we just had our fair last week and we had 4 vehicles in town every day and sometimes twice, so I don't want to know what I spent on gas. But during the school year, we do try to stay home except for the day that we're running errands and doing piano lessons. Try not to interrupt school with appointments like doctor's appointments. Now, I have a friend who has a lot of medically fragile children, and they're at the doctor's office 3 days a week, but they take their schoolwork with them. So again, you're making your homeschool at home a priority. Too many commitments outside of homeschool, like sports and scouts and Bible club, and you know, you could have something every single day of the week. I suggest you pick 1 or 2 that are driven by the oldest child's desire. We, a long time ago, did soccer when we lived in Denver, and my husband coached 3 soccer teams, and that's all we did, but it was fine. When we moved to our remote area, we decided we were just going to do 4-H, and that's it. And that has worked well for us. So I recommend your kid doesn't need to do every single thing, although it's tempting and you feel the pressure for it. Limit your own use of technology. Now, this is a hard thing for me because I'm on my phone and my computer working a lot during the day, but I have told my kids when we start back to school, I will not be on my devices when I'm helping them with school. And I just recommend you try to have some sort of policy for yourself. All right, let's talk about choosing curriculum. So I first suggest, if you know other homeschoolers, you should ask them what works for them or what didn't work for them. Consider the season of life you're in. If you have a bunch of littles, then you want to get a curriculum that is like My Father's World, where pre-K through 6 can all learn together, okay? If you are on bed rest because you're having a difficult pregnancy, then you really need to figure out something that the kids can do a lot on their own, and maybe they can listen to audiobooks, things like that. Consider your budget. That's a super important thing. You can spend a lot of money on curriculum. I recommend you don't, because not every kid's going to use the same one. Consider your child's developmental stage. This is really important because you might have a super smart child, but emotionally they're delayed. Or you might have a child who really wants to read super difficult books, but they're just an emerging reader. So you have to think about their developmental stage. Consider their learning style and your teaching style. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And also what teaching methodologies like Charlotte Mason or, we're going to talk about those. Order some samples or borrow from friends and actually work through some lessons to see what you and your kids think. If it takes too much of your time to organize, maybe you're not going to do it. Request catalogs and search online, and like on Christian book distributors, you can see inside the book. I was just doing that yesterday, trying to figure out what what's going to work for my grandkids. I got 2 in kindergarten and 1 in 2nd grade. And so look and see what it looks like. Does it look like it's going to be too easy, too hard? And then think critically about the worldview. If you want your children to get a Christian worldview, then you need to be able to use Christian curriculum. And then Kathy Duffy's 102 Top Picks is just an excellent book that goes through all the different curriculums and has lots of reviews. She also has an online site. And it is, I think, important to consider your beliefs. If you're a Christian and that's why you're going to homeschool, then you really need to look at, especially in science and history, how are they handling the origins of man and the age of the earth? And I bought a really expensive book one time and I opened it up and it's like, really? They're talking about millions of years old earth and I just believe in a literal 6-day creation. It's also important, and this is something that we're seeing happen in our public schools, that your children are not learning opposing worldviews at too young of an age. If you're a Christian, you want your children to grasp the gospel and learn about Bible stories and how God created the world and things like that. And then in high school, you can start helping them be prepared for their life as an adult by teaching them about communism and Islam and all the other opposing worldviews. If you do that too young, they're going to be confused. I don't know what your view on the gender confusion is, but mine is that these people are purposely doing this because kids that are 5 and 6 have no clue what they are or who they like. And you know, that's something that kids shouldn't even be thinking about till high school or young adult years. All right, borrow or purchase gently used curriculum. Try it out for a few weeks. If it works, great. If not, then you can pass it on to somebody else. Don't spend a year's worth of your homeschool budget on curriculum that you haven't test driven, just like a car. And then Czech has a used curriculum sale the Wednesday before the June conference, and you can get a lot of good buys there. And then in March, there's something called the Hymn Fair in Loveland, which is put on by Probasco's Christian bookstore. And that's a great place to buy curriculum. And there's also, of course, tons of stuff online. But sometimes you want to look at it, not just see it online. All right, so curriculum should be related to your child's learning style. So there's actually 7 learning styles, but the 3 major ones are visual, which is seeing, auditory, which is hearing, and kinesthetic, which is moving around. And in moving around, your brain puts stuff from short-term storage to long-term. You can visit this website for a free test of your child's learning style. And if your child can't handle the computer, just have them sit right there, ask them the question, they'll tell you the answer, and you plug it in. Your child and learning styles. So it's not an indication of intelligence. One will be stronger in a child than another, and there's often more than one style. Teach with all the styles in mind, but when your child is struggling, go to your child's strength. So I've been reading this great book, I'll talk about it later, but it's about the neurodevelopment of your child and how if you have a left-handed child, then their whole left side is dominant. They should, if they walk, they should step with their left foot first. They should use their left arm. They should use their left ear, their left eye. And if they're right-handed, it's be the same thing. Well, 5 of my kids use both. And guess what? All of them were struggling learners. And so you can actually help them practice using the dominant one, and their memory and retention will increase. So again, it's paying close attention to your child. And this is something that an institutional school can't do, but you can do in homeschool. So if you have a visual child, then lots of pictures, videos, DVDs, YouTube, those are all great learning. Reading silently and also doing math silently, which I did not know about that until recently. Math is a visual skill. And I made the mistake of talking to my kids while they're working out their problem. Instead, you should talk to your kids about what's going to happen, maybe go through the first problem with them talking, and then let them visually look at what you do and what the instructions are. So reading silently, doing math silently too. And standard textbooks, curriculum like ACE, Saxon, video text math for high school. Auditory, so that's with your ears. Audiobooks, CDs, verbal instructions, and online audio. Reading aloud, sing, spell, read, and write, and making math meaningful. So kinesthetic is using your body to learn, to take in information, process it, and store it. So lots of examples, learn by doing, like 4-H is great. Rope skipping for memorization. If you've not seen the movie Akeelah and the Bee, it's just a great little family movie about a girl who wanted to do really well at spelling bee, and she would jump rope while she was reciting her words, and it helped her remember it. And then audiobook and with hands-on things, unit studies, manipulatives, science projects, and board games. All right, this is our last slide before we take our break, and I just want to go over this. This is called the Learning Retention Pyramid, and usually I get up and point to it, but I'm just going to sit here and go through it. So if you look at that, at the top of the pyramid, there's just 10% retention for reading. As you go down the pyramid, the more interactive your learning is, the more you're going to remember it. And that's true of all learning styles. So institutional school basically can only do that upper blue pyramid even if it's a really great school. Now, a super expensive, great school with a very low child-to-teacher ratio, they might get into that red area. But you see that the bottom of that is teaching others, right? So one of the greatest skills that my kids have learned at home, and it's because of the kind of learning family we were, but also because we did 4-H, my kids learned to master things by giving demonstrations to other people. So if you can get your child to learn in an interactive manner and go down to this red zone and have group discussions and to practice by doing and then to teach others, they will master what they do. And that's definitely true of my adult children, and my teenagers are also to this point. So I want you to think about getting your homeschool into the red zone, because that's where you're really going to master things. Okay, then we're going to talk about teaching methods when we start the second half. So Josh, people can have a break now.